Clara sat alone in the dimly lit living room, the clock on the wall ticking steadily, each second echoing through the quiet house like a reminder that something was off, her heart tightening with every tick as she thought about her son, Ethan, who should have been home hours ago. Normally punctual, cheerful, and full of energy, Ethan's absence tonight gnawed at her, an unease settling deep in her chest, a mixture of worry and anticipation she could not shake, and Clara tried to busy herself with little things, straightening cushions, glancing at the window every few minutes, pretending she wasn't listening for the sound of footsteps she longed to hear. Outside, the street was empty, streetlights casting long, thin shadows that danced across the sidewalk, and she imagined him walking through them, unaware of how much she had missed him, how much she had been waiting to see him, and every minute stretched longer, a slow, dragging torment that made her thoughts spiral, wondering if he had gotten into trouble or if something had happened she could not imagine, every scenario bouncing in her mind like an unwelcome visitor she could not chase away. Yet Clara tried to stay calm, reminding herself that he was careful, responsible, and that maybe he had lost track of time, maybe a friend needed help, maybe something had delayed him. But even as she reassured herself, fear tickled the edges of her thoughts, a small, persistent whisper of worry she could not ignore. She thought about the times Ethan had stayed out late as a teen, and how she had always worried then too, how she had paced the hallways, called his friends, and tried to imagine every possible reason for his delay. And she realized some things never changed, that maternal worry was constant, relentless, and tonight, it pressed heavier than ever because he was no longer a child, yet still her son, still the boy whose absence left a hollow ache in her heart. And Clara's thoughts drifted further as she tried to remember what had happened earlier in the day, the small arguments, the laughter over breakfast, the way he had hugged her before leaving, the casual, ordinary gestures now tinged with a sense of finality she could not yet name. And she found herself imagining him walking through the door, hearing the click of the lock, the faint scrape of the floorboards as he stepped inside, and she held her breath, willing him to be safe, willing the moment to come soon. But the house remained quiet, the silence thick, almost suffocating, and she felt the hours stretching endlessly, the minutes heavy with tension, the stillness pressing against her. And in the midst of that quiet, she thought about the bond they shared, the unspoken words, the subtle understanding between mother and son, the way he had always confided in her about small things, and the thought that tonight might be different, that he might have something to say that would surprise her, stirred a nervous flutter in her chest, mixture of excitement and dread, and she shook her head, trying to focus, trying to tell herself that she would know soon enough, that she should stay calm, that she should wait patiently. But the minutes did not relent, the clock steady ticking amplifying the silence, each second a reminder that something was coming, something unknown, something that would change the rhythm of the night. And then, just as the tension had reached its peak, a faint sound reached her ears, soft, almost hesitant, the unmistakable sound of footsteps on the porch, tentative, cautious, deliberate, and her heart leapt into her throat, a rush of relief mingling with apprehension, and she pressed herself against the wall, afraid to breathe too loudly, afraid to disturb the fragile moment as the footsteps approached the door, slow, measured, and then the creak of the hinges as the door opened, a sound she had heard 1,000 times but never like this, never so full of promise and fear. And there he was, Ethan, standing in the doorway, taller now, older, but still the boy she had worried over, still the son who made her heart skip, holding something small in his hand, a folded envelope, trembling slightly as he met her eyes with a gaze that held more than words could say. And Clara's chest tightened, a wave of emotion washing over her, a mixture of relief, curiosity, and a sudden fear of what was to come, for she could see in his eyes a storm of feelings, a weight of something he had carried silently all evening, and she waited, holding her breath, wanting to speak, to reassure him, to ask 100 questions at once, but knowing she could not, knowing she had to let him take the first step. And finally, in a voice so quiet she almost thought she had imagined it, he said, "Mom, I need to tell you something." And the words hung in the air like fragile glass, trembling, fragile, full of meaning, and Clara felt the gravity of the moment sink deep into her bones, realizing that whatever came next would change everything between them, that tonight was not just another night, not just another late return home before. And Clara felt a shiver run through her, not from shock, but from the intensity in his tone, the way the words spilled out in fits and starts, revealing a side of her son she hadn't seen yet, a side tender, vulnerable, and full of longing. And she reached out to brush a strand of hair from his face, A small gesture of comfort that seemed to give him the courage to continue, and he spoke of the way they had met, the small moments that had felt larger than life, the laughter that came easy, the silence that was comfortable, the stolen glances and the sparks that neither had expected, and Clara listened, heart swelling with the bittersweet knowledge that her son had discovered the stirrings of first love, something both beautiful and fragile, something that could change the way he saw the world. And he talked about the way Lila's presence lingered in his mind even after they parted, how he found himself replaying conversations, imagining what she was doing, how her smile haunted him in the quiet moments, and Clara felt a lump in her throat, because she knew this was real, this was deep, and it was all unfolding in front of her. And then he confessed, voice breaking just slightly. "I didn't know how to tell you, Mom. I was afraid you might not understand." And Clara shook her head softly, smiling through the tears that threatened to fall, because she did understand. She had felt this once herself, the exhilarating, terrifying pull of emotion that demanded honesty and courage, and she reassured him gently, "Ethan, it's okay, you can tell me anything. I'm listening." And with that, he took a deep breath, shoulders stiff with the weight of all he had kept inside, and opened the envelope, revealing a handwritten note from Lila, the ink slightly smudged, the paper soft and worn, and he read it aloud, each word carrying a tenderness that made Clara's chest ache. The note describing Lila's own hesitations, her own longings, her own feelings that mirrored his, the way she had thought about him all day, the way she had wondered if he felt the same way, the small confessions tucked between lines, quiet but powerful, and as Ethan spoke, Clara saw the way his hands shook, the way his lips trembled, the way his eyes glistened, because this was not just a message, it was a revelation, a bridge connecting two hearts that had stumbled upon each other in an unexpected way. And she felt a swell of emotion, a mixture of pride and empathy, because first love was always this raw, this consuming, this terrifyingly beautiful, and she could see it in every twitch of his expression, in every pause between words, in every breath he took, trying to capture the essence of what he felt without letting it spill too quickly, yet unable to hold it back. And then he confessed the part that made his voice catch, that made him glance away as if seeking guidance. "Mom, she's leaving town soon, and I don't know if I'll see her again, and I can't stop thinking about her. I don't know if I should chase this, or let it go." And Clara felt the weight of his words settle between them like a tangible thing, heavy and demanding attention, and she reached for his hand, gentle but firm, grounding him in the moment, letting him know that however he chose, she would be by his side. And he looked at her then, the raw vulnerability of his gaze meeting her steady, warm one, searching for reassurance, for a sign that he could trust his heart, and Clara said softly, "Ethan, sometimes the heart knows what the mind cannot yet understand. You have to feel it, experience it, and then decide, but whatever happens, I am here for you." And he nodded, tears brimming in his eyes, a mixture of fear, hope, and love swirling in a storm that only a young heart could endure. And then he spoke of their shared moments today, the small coincidences, the laughter, the awkward silences, the way she had brushed past his thoughts without knowing the effect she had, the way she had challenged him and teased him, the way the world suddenly seemed brighter, softer, more vibrant because of her. And Clara listened, heart tightening, because she knew the fragility of first love, knew how fleeting and delicate these moments could be. Yet she also knew the intensity, the beauty, the life-altering weight it carried, and as Ethan continued, his words tumbling out in an unstoppable cascade, she felt the room shrink around them, focused entirely on the unfolding drama of his heart, the quiet revelations that poured forth, the soft confessions that made her cheeks warm and her chest ache in recognition of a universal truth, that love, even when new and untested, could shake the very foundation of a soul. And Ethan admitted the small doubts, the fears of rejection, the fear of losing Lila before anything truly began, and Clara nodded, understanding that the fear of the unknown was part of the experience, that it gave meaning to the risk, to the tenderness, to the longing that pulsed in every word he spoke. And then he paused, swallowed hard, and whispered, "Mom, I don't want to make a mistake. I don't want to ruin what might be something extraordinary, but I can't stop thinking about her even for a moment." And Clara felt tears finally slip down her cheeks, because she understood entirely, because this was love in its purest, most unguarded form, the kind that demanded courage and patience, the kind that terrified and thrilled in equal measure. And she reached over, squeezing his hand, letting him know, silently, that whatever he chose, he was supported, he was seen, he was loved. And he took another deep breath, eyes glimmering, and continued to describe Lila's little quirks, the way she laughed, the way she looked at him, the way she carried herself with confidence yet vulnerability, the way small gestures between them became charged with meaning, and Clara felt herself drawn in, imagining each scene, feeling each emotion, a mother witnessing the awakening of her son's heart to the power of human connection, to the thrill of attraction, the sweetness of longing, the ache of uncertainty. And Ethan admitted, with a shaky voice, that he didn't know how to move forward, didn't know if he should wait, chase, or simply hold these feelings in quiet reverence, and Clara, holding his hand still, said gently, "The heart often leads where the mind hesitates. Trust yourself and trust the honesty of your feelings." And he looked up, a spark of resolve beginning to shine, and she could see the first glimmer of decision forming, the courage gathering, the realization that love required action as well as reflection. And he took a deep breath, steadied himself, and said, "I need to see her, to talk to her, to know if what we feel is real. I can't just let this go." And Clara nodded, proud, her heart swelling, because she knew this was the right moment, the right choice for him to step into the unknown, to embrace the vulnerability and the possibility. And as he prepared to leave the room, clutching the envelope with Lila's note, she whispered, "Go, Ethan. Face it with honesty and courage, and no matter the outcome, you will always have someone to come home to." And he smiled, faint but bright, the tension easing from his shoulders, the fear tempered by hope, and the night outside seemed to pulse with the same intensity as his emotions, the quiet street waiting to witness the next chapter. The story unfolding like the fragile wings of a butterfly, beautiful and delicate. And as he opened the door to step into the world that awaited him, Clara watched silently, heart full, knowing that whatever happened next, this night, this confession, this moment of raw, unfiltered emotion, would stay with them forever, a testament to the power of feeling, the courage to speak, and the fragile, intoxicating beauty of first love that could change everything. Ethan stepped further into the living room, closing the door behind him with a soft click that seemed to echo his racing heart. And Clara could see immediately that something had shifted in him. The usual calm confidence replaced with a nervous energy, his hands gripping the small envelope he carried as if it held the weight of the world. And for a moment they just looked at each other, the silence heavy and full of anticipation, every second stretching unbearably, making Clara's chest tighten as she sensed the storm of emotions building inside him, a mixture of fear, excitement, and uncertainty she had never seen before. And Ethan finally spoke, his voice low and hesitant, almost trembling. "Mom, I met someone today." And Clara felt her stomach flutter with a combination of curiosity and worry, instinctively sitting down on the edge of the couch and gesturing for him to sit, though she knew he needed to gather courage before revealing more. And he swallowed hard, his gaze dropping to the floor, then flicking up to meet hers, eyes glistening with unspoken intensity. "Her name is Lila. I don't know how to explain, but she makes me feel things I've never felt before." And Clara's heart tightened in empathy, recognizing immediately the vulnerability in his tone, the way his words tumbled out in fits and starts, each one carrying the weight of new, unfamiliar emotions. And she reached out instinctively, brushing a loose strand of hair from his face, a gesture meant to comfort him but also to ground herself in the moment. And he drew a shaky breath, beginning to describe the way they had met, the tiny coincidences that had turned into meaningful moments, the laughter they had shared that felt effortless and true, the silences that somehow spoke louder than words, the stolen glances that lingered too long, charged with a quiet electricity. And Clara listened intently, her chest swelling with a mixture of pride, hope, and the bittersweet ache of knowing her son was stepping into the uncharted waters of first love. A place so exhilarating yet terrifying. And Ethan's words quickened as he recounted how he couldn't stop thinking about her, replaying conversations in his mind, imagining what she was doing, how her smile haunted him even when she wasn't near, the small gestures she made that seemed ordinary to everyone else but extraordinary to him. And Clara could see the restlessness, the intensity in his posture, the way his hands clenched and unclenched as if trying to hold in all the feelings spilling out. And then he confessed, voice catching slightly, that he had been afraid to tell her, afraid she wouldn't understand, afraid of his own vulnerability. And Clara shook her head gently, smiling through the tightness in her chest and the tears threatening to spill, reassuring him with a soft, steady voice. "Ethan, it's okay, you can tell me anything, I'm listening." And that simple permission seemed to give him a surge of courage, a signal that he could finally unfold the thoughts and feelings that had been gnawing at him all evening. And he opened the envelope, revealing a handwritten note from Lila, each word delicate and honest, carrying a tenderness that mirrored his own emotions, and he read aloud, voice unsteady but sincere, the way she described thinking about him, wondering if he felt the same, the small, quiet confessions tucked between the lines, each one making Clara ache with recognition, knowing that this was the fragile, intoxicating first awakening of love, the type of emotion that could shake a person completely. And as Ethan spoke, Clara felt the air in the room thrum with the energy of emotions too big to contain, the shared vulnerability of two young hearts feeling something undeniable yet frightening. And then he admitted the part that made him glance away, voice trembling, that Lila would be leaving town soon, and he didn't know if he would see her again, and the room seemed to tighten around them as the reality of that possibility hit, the ache of potential loss mingling with the thrill of connection. And Clara reached for his hand, gripping it firmly but gently, letting him know through the touch that no matter what happened, he was not alone, that he could trust his heart while knowing her support was unwavering. And Ethan continued, describing Lila's little quirks, the way she laughed, the way she carried herself, the small details that made his heart skip, the way moments with her seemed brighter, softer, more alive than ordinary life. And Clara listened, fully present, imagining each scene, feeling each emotion, recognizing in every gesture the undeniable truth that her son had found someone who stirred his soul in ways that mattered. And he confessed his fear of making a mistake, of acting too soon or not at all, afraid that his inexperience with such deep feelings might ruin what could be beautiful. And Clara nodded, understanding entirely, because first love always carried the dual weight of hope and uncertainty, exhilaration and fear, and she encouraged him softly, telling him that sometimes the heart must guide the mind. That courage meant stepping forward even when the outcome was unknown. And Ethan's eyes glimmered with the first flicker of determination, the spark that comes when someone decides to act on the feelings that have overtaken them. And he spoke about the little moments that had stayed with him all day, the fleeting interactions, the shared laughter, the quiet glances, and how each small connection had piled into a mountain of longing and anticipation. And Clara's chest tightened again, knowing the intensity of what he felt was real and undeniable, knowing that these experiences would shape his understanding of love for years to come. And she reminded him gently that acting with honesty and kindness, following his feelings while being mindful of theirs, was the path to clarity, the way to navigate emotions that were new, fragile and powerful. And he nodded, swallowing hard, taking in her words, feeling the reassurance and the freedom they provided. And then he admitted that he couldn't simply let the feelings pass, couldn't ignore the pull he felt, the desire to know, to connect, to see if the connection was mutual and true. And Clara squeezed his hand once more, letting him know the courage he felt was valid, the emotion he carried sacred. And he took a deep breath, readying himself to step beyond the confines of the quiet living room and into the unpredictable world where first love awaited, a place full of possibility and risk, of joy and heartbreak. And he confessed his plan softly. I need to see her, Mom, to know if what we feel is real. I can't just let it go. And Clara nodded, proud of the resolve, proud of the willingness to embrace the unknown, knowing this was the moment he would grow, that this choice, brave and vulnerable, would mark a turning point in his young life. And she whispered, her voice full of warmth and wisdom, go, Ethan. Face it with honesty and courage, trust yourself, and whatever happens, you will always have someone to come home to. And he smiled faintly, the tension beginning to ease, the first waves of confidence and hope shining through, ready to navigate the delicate landscape of affection and longing. And the night outside seemed to hold its breath with him, the quiet street waiting as if it too recognized the significance of this step, the unfolding of a story full of tender emotion, vulnerability, and the thrill of discovering connection. And as he opened the door to leave, the envelope with Lila's note clutched in his hand, Clara watched silently, heart full, knowing that these hours of confession, anticipation, and emotional rawness would stay with them both, marking the beginning of a journey neither could have predicted but one that carried the beauty and intensity of first love, a journey of courage, discovery, and the fragile, intoxicating power of emotions that could change everything in an instant. And in that quiet pause before the night swallowed him, Clara felt an overwhelming mixture of pride, empathy, and tender longing for her son, understanding the gravity of the emotions swirling inside him, and knowing that this moment, this conversation, this vulnerability shared in the stillness of their home would forever be etched in the story of his heart, the first chapter of a love that could shape his world, his choices, and his understanding of what it means to feel deeply, honestly, And without fear, Clara watched Ethan step into the quiet night, the faint glow of the streetlights casting long shadows across the empty sidewalk, and she felt a strange mixture of pride and worry, knowing that this night, this choice, this moment of vulnerability could shape his heart in ways he had never experienced before. And Ethan's mind raced as he walked, clutching Lila's note tightly, the words she had written replaying endlessly in his head, the tender confessions, the quiet honesty, the gentle longing that mirrored his own, and he felt a shiver run down his spine as he imagined what it would be like to see her again, to hear her voice, to share even a single look that would reveal the depth of what they were feeling. And his steps quickened, driven by anticipation, by longing, by the irresistible pull of emotions he could no longer ignore, and every corner of the empty street seemed to hum with possibility, as if the night itself were holding its breath, waiting to see what would happen when two hearts on the verge of connection finally met. And he replayed their encounters, the small smiles, the soft laughter, the way her presence seemed to linger in his mind, coloring every ordinary moment with meaning. And he realized that he had never felt such urgency, such clarity, such an unrelenting desire to act, and the thought of letting this chance slip away was unbearable, making his chest tighten, making his pulse race, making every fiber of his being demand movement, courage, action. And yet he was still unsure, still trembling on the edge of fear and hope, knowing that Lila's impending departure added a weight to the moment that made it both thrilling and terrifying. And he remembered Clara's words, gentle, steady, full of warmth and wisdom, reminding him to trust himself, to embrace honesty, to face fear with courage. And he felt the reassurance settle in his chest, a quiet anchor amidst the storm of his emotions, allowing him to breathe, to plan, to act without hesitation. And he imagined the conversation he might have with Lila, the questions he would ask, the things he wanted to say, the confessions that had been held in his heart all day, and he rehearsed them silently, careful, precise, yet with the raw honesty that he knew she deserved. And as he approached the corner where they had agreed to meet, he saw her standing there, framed by the soft glow of a lamppost, hair falling gently around her face, a subtle nervousness in her posture that mirrored his own, and he felt a rush of emotion, a wave of exhilaration, fear, and longing that left him breathless, and he called out her name softly, barely above a whisper, yet it carried through the still night, and she turned, eyes widening in recognition, smile breaking across her face that sent a shiver through him, because in that simple expression he saw all the hope, all the curiosity, all the excitement that he felt mirrored in her. And he stepped closer, heart hammering, words ready to spill yet careful not to overwhelm, and she spoke first, voice low and gentle. "Ethan, I was hoping you'd come." And relief, joy, and a soft ache flooded through him because those words, simple as they were, confirmed everything he had been feeling, and he smiled, tentative, yet full of emotion, and they began to walk slowly side by side, talking in halting sentences at first, sharing thoughts, laughter, worries, and dreams, the kind of conversation that builds connection not through grand declarations but through honesty, shared feeling, and subtle understanding. And every glance, every small gesture, every brief brush of their hands carried significance, a quiet electricity that neither could ignore. And Ethan felt his chest swell with emotion, knowing that this was more than just an infatuation, more than a passing interest. It was a connection that stirred him to the core, that made him see the world brighter, softer, more alive. And he realized that Lila felt it too, in the way she laughed easily, in the way her eyes lingered, in the quiet moments where words were unnecessary because the feeling between them spoke louder than language. And yet, the shadow of her impending departure hovered over them, a reminder that time was fragile, that choice mattered, that action was needed. And Ethan felt the urgency sharpen, not in panic but in determination, the desire to make every moment count, to be honest, to embrace the vulnerability that came with caring so deeply. And Lila shared her own hesitations, her fears, her own longing, her own quiet confessions, and Ethan listened, heart swelling, chest tight with empathy, tenderness, and a growing understanding of how love required patience, courage, and honesty. And as they walked under the soft glow of the night, the city quiet around them, they began to talk about what might come next, the possibilities, the risks, the uncertainty of parting soon. And yet neither could deny the pull they felt, the connection that had become undeniable. And Ethan finally found the courage to speak, words tumbling out with a mixture of fear and hope. "Lila, I don't want to lose this. I don't want to let a single moment go without knowing if what we feel is real." And she smiled softly, eyes glimmering with emotion. "Ethan, feel it too. I've never felt this way before, and I don't want to ignore it either. And the weight of those words, so simple yet profound, sent a shiver through him, confirming everything, giving him clarity, yet leaving room for the tender uncertainty that made first love so exhilarating. And they walked on, talking, sharing stories, learning more about each other, discovering small details that made each interaction feel precious, realizing that every glance, every smile, every shared laugh added to a tapestry of connection that could not be undone. And Ethan felt a wave of courage rise within him, a determination to make the most of every second, to be present, honest, and brave. And Lila mirrored him, each step, each smile, each careful confession building trust, warmth, and affection. And as the night deepened, the stars above watching silently, they paused by a small park bench, sitting close enough that the warmth between them was tangible, the quiet tension of unspoken feeling lingering like a soft melody. And Ethan took a deep breath, feeling the moment stretch, every heartbeat amplified, knowing that what he said next could change everything. And he spoke gently with honesty and care. Lila, whatever happens, I want you to know that I care deeply. I don't know what the future holds, but I know this feeling is real. And she reached for his hand, their fingers brushing lightly, a touch full of promise, a quiet acknowledgement of mutual understanding, longing, and connection. And she whispered back, I care too, Ethan. And I don't want to ignore it either. And in that moment, the night seemed to pause, time suspended, the city fading away, leaving only the two of them, two hearts discovering depth, tenderness, and a vulnerability that was thrilling and terrifying. And Ethan felt a tear slip down his cheek, not from sadness, but from the overwhelming beauty of feeling so fully, so openly, so courageously. And Lila's smile reassured him, warmed him, anchored him in the shared reality of their emotions. And as they sat together talking softly, laughing, sharing, they realized that though the future was uncertain, the present was theirs, fragile, beautiful, and intoxicating. And Ethan's mind raced, imagining the possibilities, the conversations, the moments to come, each one building the connection, each one teaching them patience, empathy, and the delicate art of caring deeply without fear. And Clara's words echoed in his memory, the wisdom, warmth, and love she had offered earlier that evening, grounding him, reminding him that vulnerability was not weakness, that honesty and courage were keys to connection. And he felt a surge of gratitude toward her, knowing that her guidance had given him the clarity to act, to speak, to embrace the uncertainty. And he looked at Lila, her eyes glimmering with emotion, mirroring his own, and felt the powerful, undeniable truth that they had discovered something rare, fragile, and precious. And as the night grew darker, they continued to walk, talk, and share, each step a testament to their willingness to feel, to care, to hope. And Ethan realized that even if tomorrow brought challenges, distance, or fear, tonight was theirs, a night that would remain etched in memory, a turning point in their lives, a moment of courage, tenderness, and first love that would shape their hearts forever. And as he glanced at Lila, hand in hers, he knew that this connection, this raw, honest, and tender bond, had already changed everything. And though uncertainty lingered, excitement and hope pulsed through him, a reminder that love, in its first fragile and beautiful stage, demanded courage, honesty, and the willingness to embrace both risk and reward. And in that quiet, suspended night, under the watchful gaze of the stars, Ethan and Lila discovered the intoxicating power of connection, the thrill of first love, and the gentle, enduring promise of hearts daring to care deeply and openly, knowing that whatever came next, this night, this conversation, this shared vulnerability, would remain a memory they would cherish, a seed planted for the possibility of something extraordinary, tender, and lasting, a night that would forever remind them of the beauty of feeling fully, courageously, and without hesitation.